Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time again for the first and long college football show. That's right. You are here. You made it. It's time again. We are breaking down what we saw in week 10, talking about our week 11 top 25, going through matchup predictions for week 11. We're going to give you our playoff prediction today. We got a loaded show coming up. So thank you so much for tuning in. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already done so. About 90% of the people that watch our videos are not subscribed, and we really, really need your help with that, guys. We just got over 100 subscribers, which is a big deal for us. Help us get to 200. Let's try to get to 200, and the thumbs up help a lot too. So thank you so much for tuning in. Let's dive into it. Week 10 was extremely entertaining. And I know, Mason, you've got some points that you want to get to because, I mean, honestly, we could have like a 2-hour show about what we saw in week 10. I mean, let's just be real. There's so much to break down. What were your quick thoughts, your takeaways? What did week 10 bring to light for you?
Yeah, so I've got 5 key takeaways from this weekend, and 5 kind of like really broad takeaways. We could get into the statistics of everything, but I think that we're a little bit late to the party on that, with it being Tuesday night. People are ready to start focusing on week 11. So I'm going to try to give you 5 quick points on week 10, the week that was. The big takeaways for the week. Number 1, UGA is the best team in the country now, with the Missouri win that boosts their resume. Missouri fought hard, and I think that they are a really good team. They should hold their heads up high after that effort. Point number 2, Florida State is the worst undefeated team remaining. They struggled early with a really bad Pitt team, and FSU gets beat by every other team in the top 5. But they are still undefeated, so they deserve that, because they're of their undefeated schedule. Oklahoma State is good enough to win out and face Texas in the Big 12 championship and beat the Longhorns. Point number 4, Alabama is going to finish the season with their best win being a 24-10 victory over an Ole Miss team that was a good kicker away from losing to the horrible Aggies. I think Bama will win out and get beaten handedly by UGA in the SEC championship game. And point number 5, do not buy Dabo's Clemson stock until he changes his philosophies and utilizes the transfer portal. Those are my 5 quick takeaways. What do you think on those, Mark?
Yeah, I think those are some very good points. One of my big takeaways, Texas is going to struggle if they don't have Quinn Ewers. That's one of my big takeaways. Texas is on pace to be able to do everything they want to do this year. But honestly, that game that we saw against Kansas State, the way Texas came out, I thought this was going to be easy cover. I thought they were going to be able to, run up and down the field on them pretty good. And Kansas State, they fought their way back, man, and made it a ball game. And honestly, I think it was one of those boneheaded coaching decisions that we've seen all year, going for it instead of kicking the field goal. Everything's on the line. You're not a team with nothing to lose there. Kansas State was trying to go play for the Big 12 championship game. I don't know why they were going for that touchdown right there. Put the pressure back on Texas. Texas had a horrible possession. So while it was an amazingly called game by Kleiman and the crew, my gosh, I just thought that was a bad decision at the end of that game, and squandered what I thought was a good opportunity for Kansas State to upset Texas. Another one of my big takeaways was, if Ole Miss is going to be a top 10 team, I think they need to be probably pulling away from teams like Texas A&M. Offense looked really good, but defense left them vulnerable in this game. We'll talk more about Ole Miss later in the show, so I won't glare on that too much. You talked about Dabo and the boys beat Notre Dame, but every week that goes by, I think that Notre Dame team is worse and worse, to be honest with you. They looked bad. They looked horrible. And I think you're right. It's not time to buy stock in Clemson. I wouldn't buy that stock right now. Utah, somebody we're going to talk about this week, they scored 55 points last week. That's all I really took away from that. Anytime you score 55 points and you're Utah, that's big. That's a big deal, and it's going to give them some wind in their sails this weekend. Florida State, playing with their food, okay? This was a Pitt team that was in a Twitter fight with their coach last week, okay? This and we talked about it on the show. Either Pitt is going to lay down and act all pissed off and like at their coach, or they're going to fight. Well, I guess they came out and fought. I don't know. This Florida State team, I feel like, is somewhat untested. And then Georgia and Missouri. I feel like Georgia passed a big time test against Missouri, and I think the offensive line didn't look fantastic. Georgia didn't, I don't think, even have their A game in this game, and still won by 2 possessions against a team that I certainly think is a top 15 team. Missouri's going 10-2, I think. So I think that was a really good win for Georgia. And I don't even think they had their best stuff. Obviously, we know they don't have their best player on the field, so we know they don't have their best stuff. Kansas wins again. Washington's in a shootout with USC. Washington needs some defense, or they're not going to win or make their way to the playoff. We'll talk about playoff predictions here shortly. And Alabama looks good again. So, yeah, I've dogged on this Alabama team and this offense at times, but they looked good. The offense looked pretty good in the second half. Again, this past Saturday, did what they needed to do. I'll be the first one on here telling you when Jalen Milroe looks like crap, and I'll be the first one to tell you when he looks good. And he looked good. He looked good, and it's something that he can build off of. And it was very interesting to me to see Alabama start to use the quarterback to run, which is something they haven't done all year. And I really feel like they've been sitting on it. I think everybody said, wow, Tommy Rees all of a sudden called an amazing game. You don't think he knew that Jalen Milroe could run? But if Jalen Milroe was running all year and he got hurt, where would Alabama be? They might be a 7-5 football team or something like that, 8-4. So with that being said, I think that Alabama is evolving. I think that they're moving on up. And if you were going to want to knock Alabama out of contention, then you're going to have to go and beat them boys, because it looks like they're on the way to Atlanta again. Huh?
Yeah, I think so. And, it's kind of weird. I'm going to steal one of Andy Staples' points from On 3, but doesn't it seem like Alabama's a likable team for once? Like, all of a sudden, they haven't won it in a couple of years, and Jalen Milroe has this real positive attitude, and Terrion Arnold has this, super energetic and magnetic sort of vibe about him, and this team is kind of vibing really well right now. And as a Georgia fan, that's scary to see. It reminds me of 2021 Georgia, and how there was just this weird but positive feeling around the team. And it's just interesting, that you can you're almost not rooting for them, but you almost like a Star Wars reference. You almost like the Republic in this sense, and it's like the clones are like super friendly and joking, and it's very odd to see, but that's kind of what I feel like is happening in Tuscaloosa right now. But I think you're totally right. I mean, Jalen Milroe rushes for 4 touchdowns, and all of a sudden, he's a really good running quarterback, and he has been. We know that. But I think that he really needed to do that in this game, because LSU took away the deep ball. Alabama was 1 for 7 on balls of 15 yards downfield or more, and LSU just really eliminated that, which was something we thought they wouldn't be able to do. So that was really impressive to see them pivot like that, and to see Alabama, come out with the win and come out with a big, offensive production, even with the limiting deep ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't look now, but Alabama seems like they are they're morphing into much more formidable of a foe for Georgia in that SEC championship game. And honestly, I think that there's very obvious glaring issues with that offense, but Nick Saban, this might be his best coaching job yet, honestly. The way that he's gotten this team to this point in the season, because man, it just looked bad at one point, and I think that he has done a really, really, really good job of getting that team where he wants to go, and that's Atlanta, because everything's in front of you. You win in Atlanta, you're going to the playoffs, and you're going to have a chance at a national championship. And a year like this, man, if you can just get in there, you never know, because there's no one just Death Star team this year. So I think all four teams, unlike years in the past, I think all four teams have a legitimate shot to win it this year. Especially if Michigan can't steal your signs anymore, then, everybody's really going to have a fair chance.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk more about that later. I want to kind of explain something to people that are watching. So look, if you're watching this live or watching the playback of this live, you're going to get to see all this stuff put together. But later on in the week, you're going to see this channel clip all of these matchups and all that, and there'll be individual videos. So all you people who know what's going on and you watch this stuff right here, you can watch all that stuff in one video right here, okay? Or you can go watch it clipped up later in the week. Whatever works better for you. We don't really care. But we're going to do it every week. We're going to try to do it live. And that way, you folks that are subscribed and are paying attention, you actually get the information early, okay? So thank you so much again for tuning in. We really do appreciate it.
And starting next week, we're going to be going live on Sunday mornings.
Yes.
So
Sunday morning.
We haven't nailed down a time quite yet, but we want to get there early. We've rearranged our schedules to make it work, to get this information out soon. And we want to react while everybody's still thinking about it. That's why we can't really do a week 10 reaction on a Tuesday night, because people are ready to look ahead. And that's kind of what we're about to do. We're going to look ahead. We're going to re-rank our top 25.
Reaction videos are my favorite, man.
That's right.
They're my favorite, because that's whenever it's like right on my brain. Like I just saw it all happen. All the emotions are raw. So this is us having a little first and long college football show meeting right here, and all of you are invited. So welcome to the meeting, and we're letting you know what we got going on going forward here. So yeah, Sunday mornings, plan on hanging out with us. The video will be up after Sunday morning, so you're more than welcome to come watch it in the afternoon, whatever. But just know that content will be available on Sundays going forward. Would you like to jump into our top 25 and playoff predictions? Let's do it. Let's load up our top 25s onto the screen here. Thank you, Mason. So you look down here at the bottom, 25, 24, 23, 22, and 21, that bottom row there. I am more confident in that row this week than I have been in a while. I feel like as the year goes on, I think we are starting to figure out really what our top 25 teams are, because the way Kansas State played last week, I know it was a loss, but I mean, we can't penalize them too much for a loss to a team that's in the top 10, right? And on the road. So North Carolina, we know what their potential is. We know what their floor is, but we know what their ceiling is, and it's very high.
Yeah.
Notre Dame, I don't know if Notre Dame's got the right football coach, Mason. I'm starting to wonder, dude. I don't know, man. I just don't know. Until it seems like he's recruiting pretty decent, but that the coaching staff there, I'm just not in love with offensively. How does Sam Hartman go to a place like that and he's worse? I don't understand that, not one bit. We know what LSU is capable of. Very strong offense, one of the strongest offenses that you're going to see on this top 25 here, honestly, especially whenever they've got Daniels healthy, because that guy is just freaking unbelievable. Jaden Daniels, that the first three quarters of that LSU Alabama game, unbelievable. Just one of the best showings at quarterback that I've seen. The man had, a whole game's like numbers in three quarters. Gosh, I would have loved to seen what LSU could have done if he'd have stayed in the game. And then Arizona has been a solid team for 3-4 weeks. They've kind of grown as the seasons went on. Noah Fafita is playing some really good quarterback for them. But nobody really pays attention to the Zona schools, right? They typically play late at night. Not as many people watch them, but I'm here to tell you this is a pretty well-rounded football team here. What do you think about these this bottom group right here in the top 25?
Well, I think it's important to explain that, and we kind of have to do this every show, unfortunately, but, there are teams that deserve to be in the top 25, and there are teams that are like legitimate top 25 teams from a power rating perspective. Like, I don't think that JMU at 20 would beat Kansas State at 25. That's
right.
I don't think that, but JMU is undefeated and they're a really good team in their division. So they kind of deserve to be in that. If they get beaten, like we saw Air Force get beaten by my Army Black Knights, if JMU gets beaten, then we'll take them out. But right now, I think an undefeated team deserves to be in the top 25. Anyways, going back to what you were saying, I thought Kansas State played their freaking butts off. You mentioned it earlier. They're a good field goal kicker away from taking the game into overtime, and I wasn't too upset with them going for it, but I get what you're saying. Why be so overly aggressive? I thought that they tried to steal the game away at the end there, and could have just kicked a field goal, but nonetheless, out of this bottom five, rather, I feel like maybe Kansas State is the best team of them all, in a way. As I look at it, I think that they're kind of the more complete team of the bunch. But and then Arizona is probably the hottest of the teams, right? They've just been kind of surging. Their stock is rising for sure right now. They've been playing some really good football.
Yeah, for sure. So going up that next row, you talked about JMU. Hey, their record speaks for itself, and that's why they're where they're at. Congratulations, JMU. You've made the first and long college football top 20 for the first time. So congratulations. Your award is in the mail. Oklahoma at 19, Kansas at 18, Tulane at 17, and Utah at 16. Utah's just the hair in the biscuit that's baked in. You just can't get them out of the top 25. They just got their claws dug in. All of a sudden, they scored 55 points last week. I don't know where that came from. And we know what their defense is, and we're going to talk more about them later in the show because they got a big game coming up this week, and maybe a line that's going to surprise you on that game. It did surprise me a bit. Tulane, they've got a loss to Ole Miss, and that's the only loss they've got. Looks like that's going to be your highest ranked team outside the Power Five for bowl season, more than likely. We'll see how that goes for them. Kansas is on a hot streak, and looks like they've figured things out a little bit. Just a good team. I mean, they're just a pretty good football team. Leipold has done a fantastic job there. Oklahoma falls again. Man, gosh, I have to say, all you Oklahoma fans were. I thought you enjoyed the video last week, but then some of your comments, I don't know if you enjoyed it as much. But we got called Oklahoma State fans and all kinds of stuff. So, which is fine. We don't care what you call us. We're just glad that you're watching and commenting. But and I totally kid. But that was rough to take the shot on the head from little brother on the way out. And that's what I was told, that Oklahoma State was their little brother. But little brother won this fight. And Oklahoma is going to have to lick their wounds and hope that some people stumble along the way and they can get their chance to ruin Texas's season at the end of the year. That's about all there is to hope for at this point. What do you think about this group?
Well, while we're on the Kansas talk, I mean, Kansas's only losses right now are to Texas and Oklahoma State, the two teams that are favored to play in the Big 12 championship right now. So, yeah, Kansas is a pretty good team. I was surprised that Iowa State was favored last week, which is why I think you and I both took them in that game. And lo and behold, they ended up winning by 7. This coming up week, I just pulled their schedule up because I couldn't remember who their losses were to exactly. But this coming up week, they're only 3.5 point favorites against Texas Tech. So I'm going to be riding with the Jayhawks again this week. Come Friday, tune into our Between the Lines betting show. Actually Thursday nights now. And,
Josh, I forgot Texas Tech was playing football.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
What a fall for them, but nonetheless, yeah, you mentioned JMU. I haven't watched a single JMU game this year. I'll be honest with you. I know
This was an obligatory ranking, wasn't it?
It is. I mean, it really. I think the biggest news with JMU is that they cannot go to their championship game, which I think is just absolutely absurd. The best Division II football team, pretty much, and they're not even able to play.
For the life of me, figure out what that ban is about. Why?
It makes no sense. I think college football fans deserve to see that. Now, there is a chance that they get into a bowl game if, I guess, there aren't enough FBS teams that have at least 6 games. But, I don't know. I'd really like to see them, in a championship game as well. OU, still a really good football team, y'all. Really balanced. I think they're another year out. And I think that they need another year under that Brent Venables defensive scheme to kind of get going on the defensive side of the ball. They were looking hot early in the season, and they've dropped 2 in a row now, and they're on a bit of a slide here. Tulane, they're still favored to win their division. I think that SMU might have something to say about that, but for now, Tulane's they've got one quality loss, if there is such a thing, against Ole Miss, number 10 team in the country. So not too bad there. And then Utah, you mentioned it, hair in the biscuit there. They're baked into this top 25. They're not coming out. And we might have some reasons to think in this preview that we're about to do on the upcoming game that they may win again this week.
Wow. Yeah, that they got a big matchup coming up, and I'm always excited to talk Utah football, and I love that Utah fan base. They're very, very passionate. They're a bunch of ride or dies. Tied at 14, we've got Missouri and Tennessee, and this was the perfect week to have them suckers tied at 14. You know why? Because they're playing this week, man.
Yeah.
They're freaking playing this week. So we're going. It's the battle to see who's really 14 in the college football. In the first and long college football ranking. That's what they're saying.
We don't do this intentionally, folks. Like, this has happened, I think, 3 times this season somehow. But it's completely unintentional. We're both blind when we make our own top 25 and we average those 2. So it's kind of weird that it happened, but
I don't know Mason's top 25 whenever I'm making my top 25. We don't see each other's before we average them together. So yeah, this is literally just how it happened. And I think it's a 1-point spread. So I'd say we're pretty damn accurate. Even though this isn't a power rating, it does match up nice and tidy. So we'll break that game down a little bit. Missouri, of course, is off their loss to Georgia. Tennessee beat some Helen Keller school for the blind and deaf, beat them by about 100 points or whatever. It seemed a bit excessive to me, honestly.
Yeah.
But Tennessee, boy, they'll run that score up on you now. They love to run the score up on teams when they can. And that's every bit they're right. They can do that all they want to. But somebody needs to tell them it's not the BCS era anymore. You don't have to do that. Number 13, Oregon State. I'm like, Oregon State's a decent football team, but again, it's like a hair in a biscuit. You just can't quite get rid of them. They're just here in the top 15 again. Here they are. Oklahoma State beats their bigger brother in a fist fight there in Stillwater and has moved their way up to number 12 and is lurking in the Big 12, looking to play for a Big 12 championship. And Louisville in their respective conference looking to do the same thing and is lurking on the doorstep of Florida State in the ACC championship. As there is a few games left, it looks like they're on their way to that there in Charlotte, North Carolina. What do you think about this group? This is a fun group right here.
It is. It's getting interesting. And I'm not gonna spend any time on the Missouri and Tennessee game. We're breaking that game down here in just a few minutes. If you will stick around with us, we'll be sure to break that one down, and we'll also cut that and have that release as well on the channel as a standalone video. So for your convenience, viewer. And all right, so number 13, you've got Oregon State. I went to put them at 13 and I'm like, is that right? Like, am I missing like 5 teams or something? Because I feel like this is a number 18 team in the country, but no, they are truly a number 13 team in the country. And I think that's pretty true across most rankings, which is kind of surprising. They play a bit of a lackluster style of football, but they're getting the job done, and from a power rating perspective as well, they're a solid team. So they definitely deserve to be in the top 15. Oklahoma State coming up out of nowhere. I think we're higher than most people on Oklahoma State right now, but we were higher last week too. We had them ranked in the top 25, and a lot of rankings didn't. The CFP poll did. So we felt validated there a bit. But now Oklahoma State, to me, I think is definitely going to go based on their schedule. I think they're definitely going to go to the Big 12 championship now and face presumably Texas. And I mentioned it earlier. I think Oklahoma State has what it takes to win that football game. Now, I also think that Texas can win that football game. I'm not telling you that Oklahoma State is going to beat Texas necessarily, but I do think that Oklahoma State has what it takes to win that game, which is something I was not saying even 2 weeks ago.
Do you think that Texas, and we'll quickly get off of this, but do you think Texas with Malik Murphy can beat them?
I don't. I think that
I don't think
Texas,
I do either, man. Not right now.
Yeah, no, not with if Ollie Gordon is healthy, right? Let's premise that as well. He is kind of that whole offense. So they definitely
Alan
need him
Bowman
playing.
didn't look bad though, man. I mean,
that's true. That's true.
That's a guy that apparently has been from college to college to college, literally, I think 3 different ones. And they lost their quarterback from last year, Spencer.
Sanders.
This team, man, they're on a heater, dude. Like it seems like they are on a heater. And then we said it when Quinn Ewers got hurt. Just because they say it's going to be 2 weeks, dude, it could be 4 weeks. It could be 5 weeks. It could be the rest of the season. He could be out.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know. We don't know when he's coming back. And this Texas team with a first-year quarterback, we saw what it looks like last year. This team was very talented last year, but they had a first-year quarterback, and this system ain't made for no first-year quarterback, dude. Steve Sarkisian's system is very complicated. So, anyway, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Texas is one really interests me in this top 25 and the remainder of the year.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on them and the health of their entire team, but namely Quinn Ewers. But lastly, you've got the bird with teeth, number 11, Louisville, the Cardinals. This is another team that deserves to be where they're at, but I don't think that they're as good as where they're at. I do think they're a top 20 program.
Now they're going to come after you, Mason.
Hey, well, when we talk
bird with teeth on you.
When we talk Cardinals, and we're saying that they're not as good as people think they are, they tend to win. So we're just doing you a favor here, Louisville fans. Don't shoot the messenger here. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. They've got 3 easy games remaining. I think that they win all of them, and I think we see them in the ACC championship against Florida State, looking to play the upset alert, and I think they can beat Florida State.
I do too.
Yeah, we'll get into that once we get into our top 5, but I think that Florida State's pretty beatable.
Yeah, I definitely do. You catch Florida State on the wrong day, they're certainly beatable. Depends on how that 50-50 ball goes, right? That's kind of what they live and die by, it seems like. All right, top 10. Number 10, we got Ole Miss. 9, we got Penn State. 8, we got Alabama. Number 7, we got Texas. And number 6, we've got Oregon. So basically the top 10, here's all your winners from last week. Your big winners pretty much. Look, out of this group, we're going to see what Penn State's made of this week. We're going to see what Ole Miss is made of this week. I think we're seeing Alabama trend in the right direction. We just talked about Texas. I think we're seeing them trend in the wrong direction. And I think Oregon could quietly be the best team in the country. I think it's very, very possible. What is your thoughts on this group? I'm keeping mine short and sweet here because we talk
Yeah.
about these same teams every single week. But
We
right now, Oregon just seems like one of the one. Oregon and Georgia seem to be trending upward to me.
Mhm. Yeah, we do constantly talk about these teams, and for good reason. You know, our top 11 this week was identical. And I think that if you compared us, I haven't seen the AP poll in like this week at all, so I don't know exactly where they're at, but it's probably about the same, if not identical. Well, minus Michigan. We're lower on Michigan because of their asterisks there. They cheat and all. So we
Always
don't.
check the legend on charts.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Always check the legend. So you're going to see down there the asterisk. That means cheats.
Yeah. So, but yeah, in this 10 through 6, you mentioned Oregon. I share that sentiment that, this Oregon team is absolutely complete. We're going to break down their game with USC coming up this week here in just a minute. And I think that they're one of the more balanced and through position by position, one of the more complete teams in the country. At number 7, Texas. They've showed some vulnerability in some games here as of late, especially without Quinn Ewers. Malik Murphy doing enough to get it done, but he's got to control that football a little bit better to stay in the top 10. Otherwise, they may drop a game, and it probably won't come until the Big 12 championship. Looking ahead at their schedule, I think they've pretty much got their schedule in the regular season wrapped up from here on out. Alabama. I think that they're going to win out as well, and they won't get tested again really until the SEC championship game. Although we've got a preview coming up on Alabama and Kentucky this week. That's kind of their last true test, and then the rivalry game against Auburn, a cupcake sandwich in between. But I think Alabama's trending in the right direction. They're playing like a top 5 program right now. So. But with that Texas loss, it'd be tough to put them ahead of the Longhorns right now. And in Penn State, another one we're going to break down here in just a minute. I won't share my secrets quite yet, but tune into their preview with Michigan coming up. And Ole Miss, Ole Miss was actually 9. I did take a sneak peek at the CFP rankings for this week earlier tonight, and Ole Miss is up to 9 in their rankings. Georgia was at 2. And I think that they had Michigan at 3, and everything else was about the same as our rankings. Yeah. But yeah, interesting. Ole Miss get moved up by the CFP rankings. It's almost like they want to put Georgia at number 1 because they see what we see on the film, and they know that like Georgia looks like a better team than Ohio State, just film wise. But it's tough to overlook the Notre Dame win, which is top 25 win for Ohio State, and also the Penn State win, which other than Washington's win over Oregon is probably the second best win in the country. So tough for them to overlook that.
Yeah. Well, we talk about these teams all the time, but 1, Georgia, 2, Ohio State. Ohio State's definitely got the best resume. If you want to look at it from quality wins and things like that. Do I think they're the number 1 team in the country? No, I don't. I have a set of eyeballs, and I watch these games, and Ohio State has got some offensive issues. And I think that's very clear to see when you watch them. I think this is the best defense they've had in a long time. But I'm not in love with Kyle McCord at this point. And I think it's a step down from what Ohio State has had here in the years past. I think Texas, if they can get Quinn Ewers back, I like them to get back in the playoffs. I'm concerned about Ewers because that injury can be one that is nagging. And Quentin, I see you commenting there. We'll put those comments up here in just a second as soon as I finish my thoughts here. But Washington feels like a team that is not going to be one that's there at the end to me, because I think that they're going to have to face Oregon again on that Friday night in Las Vegas for the Pac-12 championship. And I think Oregon So long as Dan Lanning isn't making boneheaded decisions, I think that they stand a really good chance to win that game. Quentin is saying Sark said this is the first time all year everyone has practiced, and Ewers 75% chance of playing. I think that would be if Ewers was to come back this week. I certainly feel like that would be best case scenario for his injury, right?
Absolutely.
How many weeks would that have been? 2 weeks on that, 2-3 weeks. They need him, Quentin. I'm telling you right now, they need him, or they're going to lose another game. And it's not, it's just one of them things, man. It's just college football, and it's next man up. But that offense is so damn hard. Malik Murphy is not there yet in that offense, and I'm wondering if he's ever going to get a chance to be there, because I'm thinking he may be transferring out with who they've got sitting behind him, and with a guy of the name of Manning. So very, very crowded quarterback room there, tons of talent. It's just a really tough system to come in with a first-year quarterback. And that's why Carson Beck has surprised me, what he's done at Georgia this year, because Georgia also runs a very complex offense. And to be a starter versus just playing on the practice squad, and getting reps in practice is two totally different things. And I think anybody can understand that. Texas is one of the most talented teams on the line, skill position, all that stuff. But we all know how important quarterback is. And Ewers, I felt like, had taken a big step up in running this offense this year. Quentin, thank you so much for commenting, buddy. I really do appreciate that. And we hope you hang around and watch some videos with us, man, and watch some college football. We appreciate it. You want to get into our playoff predictions?
Yeah, sure. Let me back out for 1 second and get that screen pulled up.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, just kind of go, and let's clarify. So this is our prediction for who's going to make the Final Four, right? Not some kind of, this
right.
is what we think it's going to look like whenever that time comes, after conference championships, all that kind of type of stuff. So let's throw that bad boy on the screen. Is there one for each of us, Mason? Is this one mine?
This one's mine right here. So I'll go ahead and walk you through my thoughts here, and how I see it playing out. Again, this isn't if it ended today. This is how we think that it's going to play out. So Georgia's sitting at number 1. I think that they get it done the rest of the way. I think they go undefeated, claim that number 1 seed. Ohio State at number 2. I think that there's going to be some issues for Michigan, and I don't know if Michigan, with a loss to Ohio State, gets in with just the win over Penn State over a 1-loss conference champion Oregon, or an undefeated. I know they won't get in over an undefeated Florida State, but if Oregon is able to go and face Washington and win that game, I think that Oregon gets in over Michigan, especially with all the things that have gone on there. I don't think that Michigan, without cheating, is able to beat both Penn State and Ohio State. I think that they lose one of those games, if not both of them. So that's my reasoning for having Ohio State in without a Michigan being in the fold here. Florida State, I think that right now they are on pace to go undefeated. I think that if this is the playoff that we see, I think that Florida State is the weakest of those 4 programs. But I think that looking at their schedule, they should go undefeated for the regular season, and then they should have to face Louisville, and that's a team that they will certainly be favored against. So as for right now, I think I'd be smart to keep them at 3. And then we mentioned Oregon in our top 25 breakdown. I think that they're a really complete team. Actually, of these 4, I feel like Georgia and Oregon are probably the 2 best teams. But with that loss to Washington, obviously, you kind of have to put them a notch below the undefeated teams, presumably, in 1, 2, and 3 there. But man, that'd be a hell of a playoff right there. I'd love to see Kirby versus Dan Lanning. As a Georgia fan, that's a really scary matchup for Georgia. That's that's I think a really complete team, and I think that Georgia would welcome the challenge. But as Georgia tries to stay perfect for one more season, I think that a team like Oregon could certainly disrupt the perfect season here and the three-peat.
Yeah. Quentin, I see your comment there again. Oregon has only beat one team with a winning record, and that was Utah. Yeah, I hear you. And Michigan, I don't think has played a ranked team this year. And everybody said that Georgia's schedule was the easiest schedule of all of them to start the year, and Ohio State's best win is against a Penn State team that's probably going to lose again this weekend, and a Notre Dame team that hasn't been very good. I think you can pick apart, especially Florida State. God dang, who have they played? I mean, you really want to get into it, but there they are ranked, and that's that's college football. But the good thing about Oregon is we're going to totally get to see what they're made of right here at the end. And if they're not the real deal, they're not going to make it. Because their back's already against the wall. They've already got one loss. Obviously, for them to get to the number 4 spot here, they would have to win out and win a conference championship. And at that point, there's no doubt about it that they would be a deserving team. If they win against USC, they avenge their loss against Washington. They've got Oregon State that would have to beat. So if they go through that gauntlet right there, then they are absolutely in there. And Quentin said, full disclosure, Texas fan here. I kind of gathered that, and we've been watching Texas closely this year because both of us have them predicted in our playoff. And I'm going to be honest with you, Quentin. If I knew that Quinn Ewers was coming back this week, if I knew for a fact that was happening, Texas probably would be in my playoff. But with that being said, here's my playoff, and they're not. So I'm with Mason. I think Oregon is a really good team, and I know what you're saying about who they played and whatnot. But I've got eyeballs, and I can see that all 4 of these teams are good. Ohio State seems to me to be, I think, the weakest link right now. And I think that's kind of, to call them the weakest link is kind of tough. But the way I could kind of see this happening just the same way that it did last year. Somebody, Michigan or Ohio State's going to win that last game of the year. I think they can both go undefeated to that point. And then you've got a one-loss team, a one-loss non-conference champion. And I think that Florida State, I think they're going to lose that last game to Louisville, and with too many close games and not a strong schedule, I think that Florida State loses that game to Louisville, and I don't think we have an ACC team in there. And then I feel like the Big 12, you could have a situation again where Texas, and I'm telling you, Quentin, all you Texas fans, if I knew he was coming back, Quinn, then I would put them in here over Ohio State. But I just haven't seen that yet, and I've got to see it first. So whenever that happens, I will definitely consider that. But right now, this is the way I see it shaking out. I could see the Big 12 having a bunch of 2-loss teams there. I could see the ACC kind of tripping themselves up there at the end. So this is kind of where I'm at right now. And I think this would be a fun playoff, but full disclosure, I would rather see Texas than Ohio State in this because I think Texas is a better team when they're healthy. Bama could beat Georgia, Quentin says. Yeah, absolutely, Bama can beat Georgia. There's no doubt about it. I think anybody can beat anybody. Do I think Bama will beat Georgia? No, I don't. Bama is hamstrung this year, Quentin. This ain't the Bama team that we've seen the last few years, and personally, I think the SEC West is garbage. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think that's a garbage division this year. Bama has gone against some really crappy defenses and some really crappy offenses over there. And like I said, I think they're trending in the right direction. Bama's defense might be a little bit better than Georgia's. I think they're probably better in a different way. I wouldn't say better necessarily overall. I think they're two different styles a little bit. I think Georgia's probably a little better in the secondary as they've got more senior roles at that level, guys who have been on the team, elder statesmen, I guess you could say. But I think Alabama's front seven is better than Georgia's. So appreciate that feedback there, Quentin, and love talking football. Appreciate that. But that's how we see it right now. Shall we get into our breakdowns?
Let's do it.
First up, 12 o'clock on Fox. Michigan is a 4.5-point favorite at Penn State. Over-under is set at 44.5. So, Michigan going to play in some cold Pennsylvania weather there. It's going to be about 38 degrees at game time. This is the first test we've seen from Michigan this year. They haven't played anybody. I mean, let's just be real. It's been a pretty lackluster schedule for the second year in a row. Michigan has not played a Power 5 non-conference opponent, and they've been beaten up on really, the bottom of their conference. So, is Michigan going to flinch whenever they get in here and they see some high-level competition? Because as our buddy Quentin has talked about, it's you can only go on who they've played, right? And I get that. But I've got eyeballs, and I can see that this Michigan team is good. J.J. McCarthy seems to be maybe a step better than he was last year. What's your thoughts on this game, Mason? And where do you see, maybe a good spot to bet here, over, under, spread? What's your thoughts here?
Well, first of all, finally we get to see Michigan against a good opponent.
This is the first game we broke down.
That's what I was going to say. This is our first preview this season, and that's a shame, And look, people want to hate on Michigan for their easy schedule. Nobody wants an easy schedule anymore. Not this day and age. This isn't the BCS era. Michigan coaches don't want it. Michigan fans don't want it. Certainly, the Michigan season ticket holders don't want it. And college football fans don't want it. We don't want it. People watching this channel right now, we don't want to see Michigan against easy opponents. We want to see them contested, and so it's not a win for anybody. It just kind of happened this way. But all right, so for Penn State, so they're coming off of one of their more impressive wins this season after taking down Maryland on the road, 51-15. They scored more than 50 points, which is really solid for a Penn State team, that has struggled on the offensive side of the ball. And that's the third time actually that Penn State has scored more than 50 this season. Drew Aller had a great game as well with 240 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's something that we've been wanting to see Drew Aller do is get the ball out more, to get some more touchdown passes. And really we want to see him get more of those long plays. Dante Cephas was another big star in this game. He had 2 touchdowns. He was a transfer that came in from Kent State this offseason, and they expected him to actually contribute, and he hasn't really done that so far. So they need him to get going to help out Lambert Smith this Saturday. Defensively in the game, they had 6 sacks, 12 tackles for a loss, and 4 turnovers. It was just a dominant win for Penn State overall. So Penn State's hot right now, right? That's what happened. Penn State's coming in with probably their best overall win of the year against a Maryland team that's been pretty bad here recently. They started off pretty hot, but they've been on a slide really since the Ohio State game. So do with that what you will, but I do still think 51-15 is a dominating performance. So as for this game, so I've been saying since the start of the season that Penn State would be either Michigan or Ohio State. So obviously, this is their last chance to prove me right? So I am cheering for Penn State this week unapologetically, along with a lot of college football, given the scandal that's going on with the Michigan Wolverines. I think that Penn State has a lot of carryover from last game into this one, and can win this game in front of a home crowd. In order to do so, they're going to have to play their style of football and establish the run game, but keep Michigan honest, because Michigan can stop the run. I mean, they're one of, if not the best defense in the country. But they can stop the run. So the way to defend that is to go over the top ever so often, right? Just to keep them off balance a little bit. They are who they are. Penn State is, and I don't see them being able to really pass the ball like really well. I don't see Drew Aller throwing for 350 yards necessarily. But if they can set up the one-on-one opportunities, and basically if Michigan plays the run, loads the box, they set up some one-on-one opportunities, maybe that's when they take some shots, and then they kind of back off of the box a little bit. Michigan does. So then they can start the run game up. That's a way that I could see Penn State winning this game outside of just getting turnovers and things like that. That would give them a shot. They got to help out that weak wide receiver room as much as possible. So create those one-on-one opportunities. So for Michigan, this is really their first chance to prove that they can beat a team that actually belongs on the same field as them, and to prove that the cheating that they have been accused of, the cheating that they have been undoubtedly doing, does not negate the fact that they're a good team, right? They've been beating teams that they should beat handedly. But for how long, like how far back does this cheating go? They're looking at like 2021 games, 2020 games potentially. So take the cheating out of it. Can Michigan win without cheating? That's kind of like my biggest question right now.
Yeah.
Can they win a big game without cheating? Because we've seen the footage of Connor Stalions on the sideline, telling them what play they're running and things like that against good opponents like Ohio State, and they're winning those games, and I just think that it's going to be really tough for Michigan to play with a new game plan, right? And it's not so much that they don't necessarily have the. So I was actually thinking about this today. So do you remember playing games when you were a kid, and you ever have one of those game sharks where you could put cheat codes into a game, and you could play with these cheat codes, and you would just win, and it was so much fun because you would win, easily and handedly. And then did you ever like forget your game shark at home, and you're on the road, and now you got to play without the cheat codes, and all of a sudden you forgot how to play, within the regulation.
Like, damn, winning is really hard.
Yeah, it's like without having, like if you're playing Madden, a number, a 100 overall player, at quarterback, like it's really tough for me to win, and I think that might be what Michigan is about to run into here a little bit. I think that we're really going to see what Michigan is at this moment, and what they are without that crutch, without cheating. So I'm excited from that perspective. And of course, just seeing a good top 10 matchup. So for me, I think that the sign stealing is going to have a bigger effect on the game than people think. The game plan changes for the Wolverines now after they've been playing with knowing the opponent's plays for who knows how long. And I'm calling the upset here. Give me the home team, Nittany Lions, to win this game. I think that they're going to win by 3 points. So my score prediction is going to be 30-27. Big win here for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this game is going to be played pretty damn close. And I like a lot of what you said. It's going to be interesting. Ever since Connor Stalions was hired, Michigan has lost 3 football games. So, I don't know how directly correlated those things are. And I like that pick there. Quentin agrees with you. I'm going to take also Penn State, and I'm going to take the plus 4.5. This game has been played on simulators 10,000 times, and the majority of the outcomes are Michigan winning by 3 or less, or Penn State winning. So I'm gonna go with that as far as betting purposes go. Look, we all know what the struggles have been for Drew Aller and Penn State. It's getting the ball down the field and making big plays. This team's got everything else covered. They got a great defense. They've got a good running game, but the running game has suffered because the passing game has been way too predictable. So Drew Aller's gonna have to put the team on his back a little bit here. We saw him in the Ohio State game. It seemed like he was very nervous. Gonna have to get the nerves taken care of here. That's natural. That's gonna happen. And it seems like some people kind of lose the nerves as the game gets going. He seemed really nervous last time we saw him in a big game, so that makes me a little nervous. But with that being said, I like Penn State here. They're battle tested. It's at home. This is going to be a big game. I can't wait to watch it. That's going to be one to tune into at noon for sure. Let's go to our Alabama at Kentucky game. 12 o'clock on ESPN. Alabama minus 10.5 at Kentucky. The over-under set at 48.5. Look, and we put all these betting numbers on here because a lot of people like to bet and stuff. So come join us Friday, and we will we'll give you all our best bets for the week as far as those numbers go. But for this matchup here, let's kind of break this one down. This one is teams that I feel like are kind of alike, but you just got like an Alabama light in Kentucky here. Just not as talented, right? They want to run the football, want to stop the run, want to strike downfield. We've only seen Devin Leary really have one game where he was able to light it up down the field, and then it seemed like last week against Mississippi State it was kind of back to normal. Although they didn't need to throw the ball, they ran for about 300 yards on Mississippi State. And then we see Alabama in the second halves of these big games. Man, they've piled it on. And that's what really good teams do. They win in the third and fourth quarter. What's your thoughts on this one? Is this a sleepy spot for Alabama rolling into Kentucky at noon? It just seems like kind of a sleepy spot here.
I feel like in a weird way, like that number's already baked in though. To me, I think that Alabama's really playing their best football on the year. That was certainly their biggest win on the year. And 10.5 points to me is probably not enough. I'll give you my prediction on the score at the end of this. But yeah, as I mentioned, Alabama's kind of rounding into form nicely at just the right time. Jalen Milroe proved that he can win big ball games with his legs if you give him the space to run, and their defense really showed up as well with some big stops against one of the best offenses in the country, if not the best in some ways. Certainly once they took is it Jaden Daniels? Yeah, I get Jalen and Jaden Daniels confused, but yeah. Jaden Daniels, when they took him out, obviously things got easier for the Tide. But that whole second half, even with him in, they were getting stops. And that was really impressive to see. I think that, Alabama has had a good defense this year, but if you look at their last few games, when's the last time they held anybody under 20 points, and so it's a little bit uncharacteristic for the Tide. And that's against like teams like Arkansas, that they're giving up 21 points. So it was a good outing, I think, to hold LSU to what they did, and to hold them under 40 points, I think is a win for any defense. So to me, I think Alabama is rolling right now. It's a scary sight to see, but Alabama's in it year in and year out, and I don't know why anybody would think that they wouldn't be in it by the end of the season, but we did. I did also, and here they are.
I think they wouldn't be was that South Florida game that threw me off, dude. That threw me off with this Alabama team. But that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
And you mentioned that, and I wonder if that wasn't the smartest coaching decision by Saban. To sit Milroe, and he's referenced that and said, "Hey, I tested him," which of course he's going to take credit and no blame at all for how bad they performed in that South Alabama game. But yeah, he said, I tested him, I sat him, didn't play him, and and we just wanted to see what he was made of. And he came out, and I remember that week hearing that he was out leading practice that whole week, had a good energy about him. Kind of won the starting job back from not even playing. And so, and I really like Milroe. I think that he's a really positive person. He's a guy you kind of want to root for in a way. And this Alabama team, is suddenly likable. I mentioned it in our top 25 breakdown, but all of a sudden I'm rooting for the Death Star, in a weird way. And we want the Republic to win in this Star Wars alternate universe. So, but anyway, so Alabama's rolling right now. Kentucky, on the other hand, they went on a 3-game slide, starting with Georgia, where they just could not get their offense moving like they did against Florida in week 5. We saw what they did to Florida on the ground, over 300 yards, and we thought, wow, this is one of the best Kentucky teams we've seen under Stoops. And that just wasn't the case. I don't know what happened. Georgia just seemingly broke the Kentucky Wildcats. But last week, what's good when you're sliding on offense is to face a Mississippi State team, and that's what happened. They beat Mississippi State 24-3. And that's just kind of what happens when you face Mississippi State. They're competing with Vandy as to who wants to be the worst team in the SEC right now. But yeah, now Kentucky's got arguably their hardest game of the season. It's up there with Georgia for sure, because Alabama's hot. Georgia got hot when they faced Kentucky. They weren't hot going into that game.
Right.
So I think that, when you break it down, though, statistically on the year, Alabama and Kentucky are averaging about the same amount of points scored and about the same amount of points given up. But right now, Alabama, there's no doubt Alabama offensively is playing at a much higher level of football than they have all season. So I think statistics, which is where I usually lean on these breakdowns, it's really tough to look at because you're looking at a different animal, like take out almost every other week, because we've seen this beast in Alabama kind of crescendo up into what it is right now, and I think that they're a different team than the stats show right now. Offensively, defensively, you can look at that and say, yeah, they've been kind of the same all year for the most part. And they've actually been pretty pedestrian at stopping the run. On a per attempt basis, Alabama has given up 3.52 yards per attempt, which is actually more than Kentucky's given up at 3.37. So by Alabama standards, I think that's pretty high. That's a lot of yards per attempt for rushing the football. And we know that Kentucky is really good at rushing the football. Teams are starting to catch on to that, though. And that's kind of where I think Alabama is going to be able to stop them with that front seven that you mentioned earlier. I think that Bama can load the box. And if Leary can't go over the top and make Alabama stay honest, it's going to be a long day for Kentucky. I'll tell you that. But that's something that Leary really hasn't done all season. I haven't seen it. So if Kentucky's going to win, they're going to have to play a balanced game, find some success in the run game early, and keep Bama honest with some deep shots every now and then. That's really the only way that I see them winning this game, and they're going to have to get some turnovers on top of that. So I think it's going to be really tough for Alabama. For Bama, I think that they just have to play mistake-free. Magic Man, you see his comment there, and they do control their own destiny. They don't have to. They do control their own destiny for sure. And I think that Bama having the most talented roster in all of college football, still statistically, there's no reason for them not to win this game, and really every game moving forward, but specifically against Kentucky. All they have to do is don't turn the ball over and limit the penalties. Bama, for whatever reason, they've just, for the past 2 seasons, they just play undisciplined football. I don't know what's going on, but that's not going to beat Georgia. You could get away with some bonehead plays and penalties like that and beat Kentucky, which is the game we're breaking down. But eventually, they're going to have to tighten up, and they just can't have it happen too much. That's what happened last year against Tennessee. They had like 135 penalized yards. And against Texas this year, they had a lot of penalties as well. That's the recipe for Bama getting beat, is when Bama beats themselves a lot of times. Rarely, does a team just beat Bama, and it's really, it's hard to really think of a team just beating Bama other than 2021 Georgia in the national championship, Yep. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think it really matters much how disciplined or undisciplined Bama plays. I've got them winning this one on the road 30-17.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that score prediction. Now, I will say this. Georgia was able to murder Kentucky by being able to throw the football. And I don't think you're going to win it solely by running. Is Milroe going to be running the football in this game? That obviously makes a big difference. It seems like Alabama, they knew Milroe could run the ball the whole time. They've chose not to run him for a lot of the season. And then last week, I feel like maybe Alabama felt like it was a game that they needed that spark. And maybe they did. But letting him run was a big spark for this offense, as obviously he had 4 touchdowns, and he's a very talented runner. Reminds me of Jalen Hurts running the football, to be honest with you. Very, very powerful runners. But is Milroe going to be able to throw them to success in this game? That was one of the worst defenses that Alabama's going to play this year. It was what they played last week. So I think that's probably top end of what you're going to see out of this Alabama offense. Right. These wide receivers are going to have to step up on Saturday. If they're going to cover the spread, they've got to step up and help Milroe cover the spread, because if Alabama is planning on playing murder ball here, Kentucky will keep this within 10. Okay. I'm probably not going to bet on this one on the best bets because of that reason. Looking at it on paper, give me Alabama minus 10.5. But I'm telling you right now, if they think they're just going to go in and run the football here and win this game and cover the spread, I don't think they will. So they're going to need to be able to throw the football around a little bit to get over the top of Kentucky, because if they know they can key in on your run game, they can stop the run. They are very, very physical. Always very physical every year. Let's go to a West Coast matchup. 3:30 on Fox, Utah at Washington. Washington is an 8.5-point favorite, over under 54.5. So Washington just came off of, I guess you would call it a big win over a struggling USC team. That's kind of like an oxymoron there, a big win over a struggling team. But nonetheless, for Washington beating USC, it's always a big win there. Michael Penix looks like he's getting back right. Utah scores 55 points last week. Defense is what it is. We know what the defense is going to be for this Kyle Whittingham team in Utah. Is Utah going to be able to limit these wide receivers of Washington? That's really going to be what the question's all about here. And the answer, I think, is going to be yes and no. Are they going to be able to limit them to less than 50 whatever points they scored last week? Was it 52? Yes. And Washington will not 55. Score 52 points in this game. But Utah's not going to be able to keep up with Washington either. So this is a weird number, though, at 8.5. What's your thoughts on this game, and what are your kind of numbers you're looking at for this one? Washington don't run the football a ton, and Utah's really good at stopping the run. So I feel like that's a really good stat that's wasted for Utah on their side. What's your thoughts on this one?
It's a weird one to predict. Honestly, Washington has been really up and down. They've had 2 games this year where they didn't score a single offensive touchdown. You see Quentin there picking Utah to win outright. I like the pick. I'm staying away from this from a betting perspective, but let me show you kind of what I'm seeing here. So Utah, they're coming off of an impressive win over an Arizona State team that had been playing some really good football. Their offense put up 55 points in that game. First time they've scored over 40 all season long, and I think that there's a reason for that. I think that Barnes is playing really well, and the pig farmer. That's right. And he's kind of like the Brock Purdy of college football, I feel like. But yeah, so he's playing really good football, and I think that Utah is kind of starting to figure him out as much as he's starting to figure out the offensive scheme of Utah. And it stinks that we didn't get to see Barnes as the starting quarterback all offseason, playing in this offense and already being a part of this system. We would have seen a much better offense undoubtedly coming out of Utah. But the beauty in that is that we're getting to see it unfold mid-season. and I think that it's showing right now, and look, Arizona State is a is a get right team for any offense. I think that next year Arizona State will be much better. This year defensively, they're not good. I mean, I don't want to take too much away from 55 points being scored on Arizona State, but Utah scored 55 points, and I think that needs to be the takeaway. That's something they haven't done all season against anybody, let alone a Pac-12 team. On the other hand, Washington just made Caleb Williams cry by taking him out of the Heisman race and taking USC further out of the Pac-12 race. That they seemingly were never in the first place. Now, it seems like a distant memory that USC was a part of the or a part of the Pac-12 hunt there. And they beat USC, you mentioned it, 52-42, and showed just enough ability on defense to force USC to give the ball back on just a couple of drives, and that was really the difference in this game. It really felt like one of those games where whoever had the ball last would win. And, I think that it kind of played out that way, but, Washington was able to get a couple of stops there, and that was really the difference. So this game coming up against Utah and Washington is going to be a very different game from the game that Washington played last week. Utah, they're going to get their stops and on defense to keep them in this game. They gave up 32 to USC and 35 to Oregon, two similarly proficient offenses as Washington. They're a lot like Washington, in other words. So the question becomes, can Utah score about 36 points on an kind of uncharacteristically bad Washington defense this year? And I think to answer that, you have to look at the USC defense, who is really not that much worse than Washington's. In Utah's game against USC, the Utes, as I mentioned, scored 32 points. And with Utah coming off of its best offensive outing of the season, I think that answer is very much yes. They need to find some turnovers or special teams plays, but I think that Utah is very much a threat to Washington in this game after Washington played, and I know that we're looking at USC as not a very good team, but I guarantee you Washington was up for that game against USC all week. I don't want to call it an emotional win, but they wanted to beat USC and got the win. Maybe this is kind of a letdown spot for Washington, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. But for Washington to win the game, I think they're going to need to score at least 40 points. If they get to 40, I think they're good. I don't think that Utah is going to score 40 in this game. And that's something that they didn't do against Arizona. They didn't do that against Oregon. And they didn't do that against Arizona State. The team that I mentioned has a really bad defense. So it's very possible for Utah to win this game. They should be able to get to 40 with Penix, Odunze, Polk, and maybe McMillan. He was out last week. I don't think that they're clear on his timetable yet to return. But Penix will have to play their great game as Utah really has had more interceptions and they've given up touchdowns through the air. So that's an interesting stat. I think they've had 9 interceptions and given up 7 passing touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. So beware, when you're chucking that ball down deep. Gosh, I have flipped on this freaking prediction, Mark. Man, I wrote down Utah 33, Washington 41. I have a sneaky suspicion that Utah is going to be able to pull this one out. If Utah wins, I think it's going to be like a 27-31 type game in Utah's favor. I think I'm going to stick with that bet. I'm going to change my notes here for my record, but I'm going to go Utah 31 and Washington 27 in this game.
Yeah, well, part of the reason that I think the Washington was so successful last week is that they were able to run the football. Dylan Johnson, who is a transfer from Mississippi State, somebody that we've watched throughout the year, he's had a couple good games, and those couple games that he had that were good, Oregon and then USC, this offense rolled. And honestly, that's a common trend among all college football teams. This isn't some kind of groundbreaking news. If you can run the football, you can do other things, right? And that is not a strength of this Washington team. They are not a good running football team. The interior of that offensive line is just not great. It's not great. They've lost some players along the way. Pretty much the middle three guys of that offensive line, center and the two guards, have been replaced. I believe the center's a freshman. So while they've done okay, obviously they're undefeated. While they've done okay with those replacing those guys, this is the time of year where the depth really starts to show. And they're going up against a very physical Utah defensive line. They're physical every year. It's a Kyle Whittingham team. That's just what they do. They breed physicality in that football program. I think Utah limits the run game enough to make Washington force them into obvious passing downs. If Washington's not able to stay ahead of the chains in a game like this against a well-balanced team like Utah, I think it does spell trouble for Washington. We've seen Washington, like you talked about that Arizona State game, they didn't even score an offensive touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen much more inferior defenses hold this Washington team down lower than they're comfortable with. And I think you're right. If Washington can get to 40 in this game, that would be the equivalent of running and hiding with it. Because I don't see this Utah team being able to score 40 barring multiple turnovers like pick sixes, fumble recoveries for touchdowns, something like that. So key to the game for Utah here, I think, is limit the run. And if you can get a turnover or two, because we know Washington is going to throw the football. We know that's the case. If you can sit back and drop in his own and confuse Penix in some way, and get a turnover out of that or two, then I think that Utah is going to be in really good shape. But I'm going to take Utah plus 8.5 as it sits right now. We'll see how I feel about it on Friday on the betting show. May change my mind, but right now I like Utah on that plus 8.5, as I think they can limit that Washington run game and hamper this offense enough to be able to score on what I think is just a tired defense. I think they're just wore out. I don't think they're super deep. And we're, like I said, we're getting into the end of the year here, and it's gut check time. Let's go on to our next game. 3:30 on CBS, the big eye in the sky. Tennessee is a 1-point favorite on the road at Mizzou. Does Tennessee deserve to be a 1-point favorite here, Mason? I don't know. This is basically a pick 'em here. And so essentially they're saying that they think that Tennessee is a field goal better than Missouri because Missouri is able to play at home on this one, and it's a 3:30 game. Usually Vegas is given 2.5 points for a home game. So I don't know about this one. So Tennessee has been a really good running attack this year. Missouri is, I'm not going to say they're a great defense, but they're just a solid all around football team. Very, very, very solid. And is the Tennessee offensive line going to be able to control the line of scrimmage enough in this game to run the ball to the tune of a victory against Missouri? That I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned the line. I don't know. Vegas is getting to where, like, I feel like they're kind of baking in these sort of kind of emotional lines in a way. So what I mean by that is, Missouri just came off of this hard loss to Georgia. They're the home favorite. They're the higher ranked team, I think, by most polls. Why is Mizzou not projected to win or predicted to win in this game? And I think that there's a little bit of that to it, where Vegas kind of has seen this letdown spot before. So I'm wondering that myself in a way, because I do think that Mizzou is a more complete team and a better team. And I thought that they played really well against Georgia this past week. But all right, so Tennessee, though, on the other hand, they just blew the doors off of UConn. They won in blowout fashion. It was freaking UConn, but 59-3. They're 2-0 since losing to Bama by 2 touchdowns. They had a nice bounce back win a couple weeks ago against Kentucky, where they beat them by 6 points. It's a pretty solid Kentucky team. and that they beat by 6 points. The trend has been pretty positive for Tennessee this season. They had to adjust their offense into a run-first style this offseason and have been extremely productive in that transition. They have also played really well on defense, in particular against the run, which is something we haven't seen from Tennessee since like the 90s, I think. But they've played really good football on both sides of the ball. They're very physical. Missouri just had like the best loss you could possibly have in a way. They gave Georgia all they could handle for 4 quarters. A couple of turnovers for Missouri, yeah, and if they negate those turnovers, they might have won that game because they were able to drive the football really well and consistently against Georgia. I think that they're an even better team than I thought they were after a loss to Georgia, if that makes any sense at all. In my mind, it does. So, but they've been playing really good football all season long. And now the question becomes, can they bounce back from a physical and emotional loss against the Bulldogs and win a tough game at home and in essence become the second best team in the SEC East? Because that's what this game essentially will decide. Now, I guess if Tennessee wins this game, well, actually, no, Georgia would still need another SEC loss. So in order
if
for
Georgia beats Ole Miss, then they go to the SEC championship game.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say. So in order for Tennessee to win the East, they have to win this game, beat Georgia, and Georgia also has to lose to Ole Miss. And so Tennessee's technically still in it. But yeah, I think that Missouri can win this game, but I'm going to break it down and see exactly what they need to do to get this done. So there are no secrets in the bag for either of these teams anymore. You're in November, right? We're in November now, so you either are or you aren't, right? And both of these teams have proven to me that they can bang with the best of them. Missouri's offense is built through the air mostly, with Burden and Weiss and Cook, dishing it up to them. Although this past week they did find some success against Georgia in the run. I think they kind of caught Georgia off guard a little bit with that.
Me.
And, part of that too, I think, is Georgia saying, hey, we'll give that up, but you're not going to beat us over the top with Burden and Weiss. And that was a successful game plan, if that was their game plan. Maybe Missouri just ran the ball all over Georgia. Who knows? On the other hand, Tennessee wants to run the football. They spread you out. We've been saying it all season. Tennessee will spread you out, run it right up the middle with, and they got a 3-headed monster back there at running back.
Yeah, they do.
Jalen Wright and Small and Sampson both
Sampson has been super impressive.
That's right. He's a physical runner. He's electric. He's explosive. And Small is sitting there with more yards than Sampson even. Hard to believe that, but they've got 3 guys who can legitimately get it done in the SEC. And they've got some good blockers up front for them. They're opening up some holes, obviously, with how successful they've been running the football. Defensively, Tennessee is better against the run than the pass, so Missouri should have some success passing the football. And Missouri is better at stopping the run than the pass. However, Tennessee has seen defenses that are much better, I think, than Missouri at stopping the run defenses like A&M and potentially Kentucky. I think you could argue there, Kentucky or Missouri, but they didn't run very well against Bama. So I
played a good first half. They didn't run the ball necessarily well, but they were able to throw it.
That's right. Reason. So specifically, I'm just talking about the run defense here, but I think Jalen Milroe led the team in rushing yards against Bama with like 59. So, they're not unstoppable necessarily, but I also don't think Missouri has that rushing defense to stop that front seven to stop Tennessee's rushing attack either. So I still give Tennessee's rushing attack the slight edge here. But again, going back to my earlier comment, I give Missouri the edge in the passing game. I think that they are going to expose Tennessee's secondary just a bit. And I think that Luther Burden needs like 11 touches. I hope he's healthy because they're going to need him to get a lot of touches in this game. But edge to Missouri in the passing game, edge to Tennessee in the rushing attack. So let's just say for the sake of the argument, there are no clear advantages on offense or defense for either team. So digging deeper, both teams are pretty even on third down and red zone efficiency. I think from an analytics position, these teams are really about as close to a 50-50 sort of game as I've seen, like realistically. This is it's a very evenly matched in different ways. So I think that like this game is going to be decided by special teams and ball control. You know, who controls the ball better, who doesn't turn the ball over, play field position. Don't make those stupid, those stupid coaching decisions that we've seen all season long where a coach wants to go forward on fourth down and they have no business doing that, right? Play smart football and control the ball, control the line of scrimmage. And I think that that team is the one who ends up winning. For my prediction, though, I do think that the UGA game took a toll on the Tigers. I wonder if there's just an ounce of quit in the team. They are playing at home, which should help. But I think that UGA game is going to prove to have taken too much of a toll on them, and they may not be as mentally prepared for this game as they should be. From a betting perspective, this is a stay away game for me. I think you're flipping a coin, right? I don't have an advantage either way with a 1-point spread on this game, so I would stay away from it. But for the sake of the show and for my score prediction, I'm going to go Tennessee 28 and Missouri 26.
Yeah. Well, last week we talked about. I think it was last week. Was it Tennessee and Kentucky? Was last week? Whenever we talked about that game, we said the first team to 30 wins the game. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. Yep. That's exactly what happened. Same thing here. If Tennessee's going to beat Missouri, they're going to need to score 30 points. I seriously doubt Tennessee holds Missouri under 30. Yeah. And I think that there's much more of a chance that Missouri holds Tennessee under 30 than the other way around. The way that Tennessee plays football and everything, Missouri is just going to need to be able to be good on third down. That's what this is going to come down to. Tennessee is going to try to run the ball. We know they're going to get yardage. We know they're going to get a push. Can Missouri stop them on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, or possibly get them behind the chains? I don't think this is a amazing, home field advantage for Missouri necessarily. But I like this game. I think this over-under is just spot on at 58.5. I really do. But I like this game very similar to the Tennessee-Kentucky score. I like Missouri 32, Tennessee 28 in this one. That's kind of where I'm at. And, hey, with the 1-point spread, I kind of like it that it's a coin flip. It's basically whoever wins the game, you're more than likely going to, you got a 50-50 shot just about. And this one may go to a pick 'em. Here by the end of the week, it may just be one that ends up being a pick 'em, and if it is, I'll play it 50%. I'll play it because I really think you got a 50% chance on either side. So that's decent odds there, and I'll take it. But I think Missouri is able to pass the ball at a more prolific clip than Tennessee, and I think that's what leads them to a victory in this game because I think you're going to need to score 30 to win it. Very few teams have held Missouri under 30. This year. Georgia held them to their lowest total of the whole year. Let's move on. We got a couple more, and we're going to try to get through these. 7 p.m. ESPN, Ole Miss at UGA. UGA is a 10.5-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 58.5. Here's some keys to victory, I think, for Ole Miss in this game. Got to get after the quarterback. Ole Miss is very good at doing so. They're ranked 7th in the nation in sack rate. Gonna have to get Carson back on his butt. Okay, first of all, because I don't think overall this Ole Miss defense is one that is just overpowering necessarily. Whereas, like I said, they're very good at getting after the quarterback. Gonna have to be really, really good at it this week because that Georgia offensive line does not allow a lot of sacks. I think they've allowed 9 for the year, if I'm not mistaken. So not a team that's just handing out sacks for you. So either got to get Carson Beck on his butt or got to get him off his spot. We've seen Carson Beck, and this is every quarterback. It's not just Carson Beck. Any quarterback you get pressure on, they're not going to be as good. I mean, that's basic football 101. Ole Miss has 65 plays of 20-plus yards this year, and that's third in the nation. This is a team that hits you with explosive plays, and that's how they operate, okay? I don't think that works to their favor in this game because I think if you're Ole Miss, I think what you're really wanting to do is you're wanting to grind the clock. Ole Miss is not good at that. They're not very good at running clock and time of possession. They're ranked bottom 60, okay, in America. So in this game, I think Ole Miss has got to obviously they got to run the ball. This Ole Miss offense doesn't work unless you can run the ball successfully. That's 100% true, no doubt about it. And then on third down, they're 97th, Mason. 97th on third down. So this is an offense that is really relying on the big play and has to have success running the football to overall be successful. UGA is number 12 in the country at preventing those big plays. UGA is very good on opponent third down, allowing a first down on third. So I think that's strength on strength. And then I think Georgia's got the advantage as far as being able to throw over the top of this defense. I think this is a pretty, for Ole Miss's sake, this is a good front seven compared to what they've had. The back end is what concerns me. And the back end is where Georgia's been buttering their own bread.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know that I'm taking Georgia in 10.5. I think that's a lot. But man, this crowd is going to be into it. It's a night game in Sanford Stadium. Everything's on the line. Georgia wins right here. They win the East and go to Atlanta. No matter what happens the rest of the year. Yeah. So with all that being said, I'm taking Georgia to win. I'm thinking maybe this number comes down to like a 10. I'd like it much better at 10. The 10 and the hook is kind of tough there. But I like Georgia to win this thing. I don't know if it'll be by double digits though. Give me Ole Miss plus 10.5. And I could also see a possible over situation here.
That's interesting. So, Ole Miss is coming off of a close win against Texas A&M. And this is Texas A&M is a team that they should have beat handedly, realistically, from a rankings perspective, right? And the way you kind of break these teams down and what Ole Miss has been able to do versus what Texas has been able to do. Like a casual fan would look at that and go like, yeah, they win easily. I actually picked Texas A&M to win that game. And I was really close to being right. It would have been a pretty big upset, but they had a bad kicker apparently that couldn't kick a field goal. So they lost the game because of that. But it's a win. It's a win in the SEC, and that's tough to do. They were able to do some nice things on offense that I thought that they might struggle with in that game. Judkins had over 100 yards on the ground and 3 scores, which Alabama had only given up 2 scores all season long on the ground. So for Ole Miss to be able to do that, I think was really impressive. Dart also had almost 400 yards through the air. So really solid offensive performance against a really good defense. That was a really strong Texas A&M defense, and something that really they're going to have to replicate against the Bulldogs this week because they're facing another elite defense, possibly a better defense as well. Speaking of the Bulldogs, Georgia finally got its first ranked win over a number 15 Missouri as they beat them at home by 9 points. Missouri gave Georgia about all they wanted for 4 quarters in that game. The Tigers rushed for over 150 yards and passed for over 200. But the difference in the game turned out to be Brady Cook's 2 interceptions. Georgia's offense showed up in the second half as they went on to win 21-30. But without those 2 interceptions, I don't know that Georgia really gets it done. But in this matchup, Ole Miss, surprisingly, when I was digging through the stats here, I found that Ole Miss was actually better at stopping the run than Georgia is. They're giving up just 3.44 yards per carry, whereas Georgia's given up 3.76. This isn't the same Georgia defense that we've grown accustomed to seeing the past couple of years. Georgia has some holes, and they haven't been as good against the run, but have a really strong secondary. Now, Georgia's going to be without Jamon Dumas Johnson in this game. They're starting middle linebacker, and I think that's a big deal. He's a big middle linebacker. He's really good at stuff in the run. But Georgia recruits that position very well. They've got a couple of 5-star freshmen that are ready to take his spot. CJ Allen will be ready to step up, and another 5-star and Smile London's going to be right there in the middle to help and to lead that freshman, and to stop the run. So yeah, Ole Miss, they're better at stopping the run than Georgia, but Georgia, they like to pass the ball. That's what they want to do. And Georgia's actually better at stopping the pass, on defense. So it's interesting. It's two different styles. Ole Miss runs the football well, stops the run pretty well. Georgia passes the football well, stops the pass pretty well. It's a matchup of two different styles, and based on those stats, you would say that this should be a really close game. But one stat that suggests that UGA has an advantage is on third down. You mentioned it, Mark. On offense, UGA is converting on third down over 55% of the time, and their opponents are converting just 26% of the time, whereas Ole Miss is only converting 36% of the time on offense. Their opponents are converting almost 40%. So this is where UGA has been really devastating. They extend drives on offense, and on defense, they're forcing the other team to punt the ball. And I think you see a lot more of that in this game. If Ole Miss is going to win this game, it's because they're forcing Georgia to kick field goals. I don't think that they're gonna stop Georgia from driving down the field and getting in the red zone. But can they stop them? That's something Georgia hasn't been very good at, is in red zone efficiency. But if you stop them and they kick a field goal, that's just as good as 4 points. So yeah. So if they're able to do that, maybe like on 3 drives, I think that it stops the bleeding down. And then they've got to do the opposite. When they get into the red zone, they got to score, because Georgia's going to get some stops. They're gonna force you to punt. But whenever you get the opportunity, you have to take advantage of it. And you mentioned as well, Ole Miss's sack rate, they're top 10 in the country at almost a 10% sack rate. So they've got to rush. Pete Golden, that's what he wants to do. He wants to rush the quarterback. They're going to have some schemes, some blitzes schemed up, and I think that Georgia's going to have their plate full up front. And if Ole Miss is going to win, they're probably going to have about 6 sacks in this game as well. Maybe force a turnover or 2.
And they're going to have to be way better on third down than what you just talked about.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. But as for my prediction in this game, I think that Ole Miss, I've got Ole Miss at 23 and Georgia at 36. I've got Georgia covering. And in that situation, the over would hit by half a point. So yeah, pretty tight on the over under in my eyes.
I think mash the over is the play that I think I'm going to play on Friday. We'll see how it goes, because I could see this one even getting up to like 42-28 or something like that. That would not surprise me a bit to see Georgia give up 28 to Ole Miss, because I think, look, this is a good Ole Miss offense. They are potent. Lane Kiffin is one of the best play callers and schemers there is in college football, but he's going against one of the best defensive coaches in all of college football, and Kirby Smart. These guys know each other. They know what each other are about, and I like the advantages that Georgia brings to the table here to win this game. But could be a tight one, and we know that it's going to be a really good game. I think at least through 3 quarters, and then maybe Georgia pulls away at the end. And we will end that section so we can cut it there. But I'm going to let you do this last one, Mason, because I've got to go get on the road.
No worries.
Mason's going to break down USC at Oregon. Thank y'all so much. And I'll see you later this week. Don't forget, guys, Friday, or are we doing it Thursday?
Thursday night,
Between the Lines betting show. Hang out here with Mason, and then come join us on Thursday. Oh, wrong one. Go ahead, Mason.
All right, I got you. Have a good night, man. All right, folks. I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. We're going to get through this last game, and stay tuned for later in the week. We'll be breaking these games down individually. If you missed anything or you want to go back and watch a video, we'll have these segmented game by game and you can preview them. All right. 10:30 on Fox, we got USC at Oregon. USC is coming off of a tough loss against Washington, a loss that Caleb Williams might even deem devastating. You know, he looked pretty devastated up in the crowd with his mom and dad. But yeah, so USC, they've given up an average of 44 points in their last 6 games. That's led to the firing of their DC and longtime friend of Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch. But I'm skeptical that a fresh start at DC will actually make a difference at all. You know, 1 week with the defense and running things your way for the new defense coordinator, I just don't think that that's going to be enough. There's not enough that you can do to prepare you, especially for an Oregon team, you know, a really tough Oregon team. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. I'm not saying that USC can't win the game. I'm simply saying that USC's defense kind of is what it is at this point. So I'm skeptical of that. Speaking of Oregon, though, the Ducks have been one of the most dominant teams in college football, if not the most dominant team in college football. And they are certainly the best one-loss team in the country. And some might argue that they're like the best team in period, just in general. So, you know, and to back that up, you know, they're outscoring their opponents by an average of 31.4 points per game. I'm not sure where Michigan's at, but I would think that Michigan and Oregon are 1 and 2 in some way. Oregon playing a more difficult schedule than Michigan too. And they're averaging almost 8 yards per play on offense total and over 6 yards per play in the running game. Oregon is an absolute powerhouse this season and is going to be really hard for any team to stop, but not impossible. For USC to win this game, they are going to have to force some turnovers and field goals. I am convinced that USC is not capable of stopping an offense from scoring on any drive without a turnover, but can they take away points simply by forcing the Ducks to kick field goals on the majority of their drives or some of their drives? That's just as good as taking touchdowns away and taking points away and in a sense scoring points. But I think that Oregon, they're going to get their stops. So for USC to win this game, they're also going to have to get their stops in the red zone. I think that they do need to get some turnovers. Maybe you know, they're really good at pass rush, so maybe they get to the quarterback, force a turnover that way. You know, get Bo Nix off of his game, and maybe they could win it that way. It's going to be a really, really tough task and a really tall order. For Oregon, the goal is simple: protect the football and force like 2 punts, and their offense should be able to do enough to win the game. If USC has any fight left in them, they're going to score some points, but Oregon should be able to score more against, as I mentioned, a USC defense that really just doesn't do it for me. You know, that they're not very good. I don't think that USC is going to be able to get any stops. I think that they might have a lot of quit in them. And for me, I think that Oregon's about to boat race USC, and that, to me, I think that this game's like a name your number type of game for Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. But I'm going to predict that Oregon wins this game 52-28, and that would give you the over in this game and certainly a cover for Oregon. I think that you're pretty safe betting the over in about any game that USC's in. And this one's no different because they score a lot of points and they give up a ton of points against everybody. So the over, I think, is the play again this week, as it was last week against Washington, when the over under was at like 76.5. You know, we still hit on that number. I would go ahead and pound that one again as well. But that's going to do it, folks, for the First and Long show this week. I really appreciate everybody who tuned in live and who commented live. We thank you. It makes the show a lot more entertaining when we have guests who come in and give their picks. We'll always throw them up on the screen just like we did this show. And we want to know where you're at, especially if you're a fan of a certain team. Give us your picks. Give us that insider information that we're missing, by maybe not covering each team as much as you would, right? Nobody's gonna cover a team like you diehard fans are for your team. Like, I'm not gonna spend 10 hours a week studying a team that I'm not a fan of. I don't have time for that, especially when I'm running a college football show and I've got 120 other, football teams to watch and pay attention to. So, any information that you can give us is helpful. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear from you. We want to build a community here, and we thank you for helping us do that. I'm Mason, and for Mark, I'm going to sign out now. Again, really appreciate you, and we will see you guys on Thursday night for our betting show, Between the Lines. Thank you.